Normally, I don't hype early access titles. We've all seen way too many broken promises over the years, with roadmaps that lead to dead ends and engines that fall apart the moment you try to push them. But every once in a while, a game comes along that captures a specific kind of magic. A movement shooter hasn't had its hooks in me, like this, since Titanfall 2. Yes, I know, that's absurd praise for an early access game that's still finding its footing, but just hear me out for a second. Out of Action is an FPS fever dream of movement, strategy, and pure aim skill set against movie poster cyberpunk stylings. It drips with aesthetic confidence without getting in the way of what's most important: the raw gameplay. One of the first things you might notice when you hop in is the projected reticles and scopes that render in-game and move, reflecting your character's physical state. As a veteran of competitive shooters going all the way back to UT 99, yes, I'm old, I've spent decades training my brain to treat the crosshair as a solid, static point of truth at the center of my universe. This system was jarring at first for me, and for a brief moment I was genuinely not a fan. The click moment happened when I stopped fighting that expectation. Once I approached it more fluidly and realized that the reticle was actually giving me feedback on my stance and momentum, and I played the game on its terms, everything changed. At that point, the mousing, which initially felt a little bit floaty, began to feel like a tool for high-level skill expression rather than a hindrance. Now, in a movement shooter, the movement loop itself is the absolute heart of the genre. If you don't get this right, everything else is irrelevant. In Out of Action, the traversal isn't just about holding down a sprint key, it's a rhythmic chain of mechanics. For straight-line speed, you're looking at a loop of diving into a roll, into a jump, and repeating that to hit Mach Jesus. But the depth goes further with wall running, wall clinging, and the ability to climb literally any piece of geometry in the environment, excepting railings, those are OP. These aren't just for show. These are tactical decisions for navigating the verticality of the cityscapes that you play in. While the current maps, and there are 3 at the moment, have some inconsistent geometry like those railings and some tricky windows, the on-ramp for movement is simple to execute while remaining incredibly engaging to master. The weapon sandbox is equally refreshing. Thus far, I haven't seen any strong frontrunners or a specific meta emerging, which is a bit of a relief after recent AAA titles and things like the SCW-10. If you know, you know. Everything feels viable because the time to kill is abrupt and punishing. If you're hitting your shots within your weapon's effective range, the engagement is over in a heartbeat. Snipers and shotguns provide that massive chunk of damage when they're used correctly, while automatic weapons are perfect for keeping the pressure on while you're flinging yourself across the map. I'm particularly enjoying the default sniper class right now, but the game encourages you to swap mid-game based on how the rounds flow, and remarkably, none of the base classes feel like a chore to play. On the technical side of things, the performance is a standout for an early access project. Running on my admittedly obscene computer, 5090 and a 9800 X3D, I was G-Sync locked at 224 FPS in 4K using the auto-detected settings. I noticed exactly 2 stutters over entirely too many hours of play in the first 24 hours the game was out. This level of stability is rare, though I would love to see some small quality of life updates, like the ability to type in a specific mouse sensitivity value rather than clicking arrows. And while the player base is currently criminally small, the inclusion of an old-school server browser separated by progression tranches makes finding a game manageable. Even when I had to jump onto EU servers from the Midwest US because I was playing at off-peak hours, the netcode felt solid. I didn't die around a single corner once, which is more than I can say for some recent high-profile launches. Looking ahead, the developer, Doku Games, has a 12 to 18-month roadmap for this early access phase. They're aiming to expand the map variety, add some more weapons, and polish those early access quirks, like the tooltips that currently resemble Path of Exile walls of text. The challenge here is the learning curve, I think. It is deceptively steep, and if the community remains small, there is a real risk of new players getting discouraged by the people who have been playing for several hundred hours in early tests. The server trenches do help, and the inclusion of an offline mode with bots, who are actually better than some of the players I've encountered, is going to continue to be crucial for helping people develop that mechanical mastery before they step into the shark tank. The character progression does gatekeep the creation of custom classes a bit through account-wide challenges, which might be a turnoff for some, but I don't hate the pacing. It forces you to sit with the default options and truly learn the movement and the game itself before you start layering on extra complexity of late-game weapon modding. Really, I'm legitimately excited to see where this goes. For $20, you're getting a shooter with a soul. one that makes me want to log in the moment I leave my desk. It is a 10 out of 10 start, with no notes other than keep cooking.